So I'm just going to start out by saying hi.
Hi. It's good to see you again, Andrea.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming again today.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it, and I look forward to sharing you and your story and everything that you've accumulated as far as your gifts and your lessons and anything that might be empowering for other people.
Well, I don't know about the gifts and lessons, but I've got a lot of road miles, so let's hope we can get it in today.
I think you have some nuggets.
Okay.
I think you have some nuggets to
we'll
share.
dig around for some nuggets.
Okay, I'm excited. Okay, and so can we start out, Greg, by telling me a little bit about who you are and what you do in the world? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Well, that might be one of the longer stories.
Okay.
So let me try to cut it down a little bit.
Sure.
Who I am and what I am doing in the world, really the answer is to go backwards in that it's taken me a long time to return to what I think my purpose was in coming here in the first place. And that led me on a long journey. I started out when I was pretty young. Actually, I recalled this the other day. When I was about 12, I'd always had in my mind that medicine was the future for me. And when I was 12, I used to ride my bike. My mom was a nurse, and I used to ride my bike over to the hospital. And a kindly doctor at the hospital would let me read the journals and go into his library. And so that was kind of something that I was really committed to. And other friends were building plastic models of fighter jets, and I was building the Visible Man and the Visible Woman and things like that.
That's so cool.
But, I kind of had the blinders on that. That was the road. That was my predestination. And when I got to college, I was in pre-med, and that seemed to be where I was headed. And unfortunately, my brother got a rare form of cancer, and he passed away. And that journey was both traumatic, as it is for all of us. And, one thing that we know now about cancer is that, there are some amazing statistics. In 1905, less than 5% of us ever faced cancer in our lifetime. Now it's almost 50%. And so that really changed the road for me. But I gave up the academics. I thought, well, this isn't, out of that trauma. There were some gifts, but I decided that life was to live every day. And that was the lesson for my brother. And so that led me to do a lot of different things in my life.
I love that.
And, well, when I was 27, I was the youngest chief engineer in the California State University system. I got into other things. I got into sports. I became an associate athletic director at Stanford University. I ended up being the general manager of the Rose Bowl. And all along, I thought life was pretty cool. I'm, present every day and enjoying every day. And the thing in the back of my head was about health. What is this that I'm not really attuning into and I'm not really fulfilling on? And I was pretty hard driving. I married my wife. We had several businesses. One of them was in tech, a little ahead of its time. We did a number of things. I worked in Asia. And along the way, I realized, well, wait a minute. These people who are here, their culture is different, and I'm really enjoying it, but there's something else going on about awareness that Westerners don't have. And a typical example would be, I worked for quite a while in places like Singapore and KL and Indonesia, and you would find that if you were sick, there were little apothecaries who provided, there were older women who had natural remedies that were handed down through the generations, and they would sell them on the street, they'd sell them in the apothecaries, or you would go into a village, and if you were sick, you would go and see the dukun, who was the shaman. And so I got a little bit of an understanding of that, but what was really interesting is back here, I was still hard driving, and we had an executive coach, and she said, you ought to go study shamanism. And I went, what's shamanism?
Yeah,
because it's one of those words it's been, I have to say something about that. It's been sort of culturally misappropriated.
Yes.
But the problem is it's a body of knowledge and tradition. It's the oldest healing tradition in the world, and it goes across so many cultures. It's not a religion, but religions have these sort of spiritual mind-body practices. And the word that we seem to come up with here that doesn't set off alarm bells is shaman.
Yeah.
But every culture has a different word for it. So, and also in those indigenous cultures, you don't put a sign on the door and say, I'm a shaman. You are within the community seen as one if in fact you have those awarenesses or you've been trained or apprenticed within that culture. So I was really fortunate. I eventually met my teacher, Alberto Viodo, and Alberto is a person who at a very young age was a medical anthropologist, and he went and studied with people in Peru and indigenous folks. And out of 25 or 30 years of studying, he created a school. So I actually went to shaman school. But one of the intricacies of that is, if you say that you're a shaman, well, that's an ego statement, and we don't operate from our egos. So, spirit hits you over the head and says, you think you know this, but maybe you don't. And it gives you another challenge. But over the years, I was able to study with him. I was able to go to the Amazon, to go to the Andes and study with the Caro people and really understand that lineage. So that brought me back out. But what I realized is we still had a big disconnect between traditional wisdoms, wisdom keepers, which are earth-oriented, spirit-oriented, and conventional medicine, which today has become, it's allopathic medicine is great for acute diseases.
For sure.
Absolutely. I'm very thankful to my cardiologist when I ended up in the emergency room.
For sure.
I don't think having herbs would have been the right thing at that time.
No. Yeah, medicine definitely has its place. It's meant for trauma, right?
It absolutely is.
It was never meant for preventative medicine. It was meant for, you break an arm, you need a cast. You cut yourself open, we're gonna stitch you up. That's what, and it works really well for that. It works wonders for us when we're in an emergency situation. Hopefully we don't get to that emergency situation and ignore all of the lessons or the signs or the red flags up until that point. And sometimes it has to get that loud for us to make a huge change in our life. The unfortunate part is that sometimes people use Western medicine as a preventative measure. And when we start prescribing drugs that are preventative in nature and they have these long-term side effects, right, to them, they are actually uneducated in making a very informed decision about our health in general without those two in balance. And they have to really work together, right? That I'm educated enough and taking the right support in my life that if I have an emergency, I have a backup plan, but in the meantime, I'm taking really good care of what I have and keeping that in balance.
Right. That's so true. And, I think the thing that makes sense is if we start to think about it is what's the root cause, what's underneath whatever we're dealing with. And that's where this sort of wisdom comes into play with chronic diseases, things that we're all suffering with now. And so there's a lot of possibility, I think, of bridging those two worlds. The problem is that the traditional medicine world hasn't really adopted the same protocols or methods of explaining it. So there's a gap. And that's the area that I'm excited about because there is a possibility of shifting the paradigm of health and well-being. And we're starting to see this with things like functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, where diet is so important, exercise is so important. Mindfulness is a huge trigger to good health and reinventing that. So anyhow, the challenge now, what emerged from all that time down in the jungle, as it were, is I started seeing clients, and I realized that they were the most powerful healers in the room. They were the pharmacists, because when they could activate their own healing modalities, their own resources to regain their well-being, to reduce stress, then big changes happened for them, long-term changes. And so a few years ago, to complete the journey up to date, I was fortunate to be able to go back to school. Which we've discussed before, because you're in everyday life, you're busy, you're running businesses, you're trying to make ends meet, you're raising children, you have meetings, and it's wonderful to be able to take a deep breath and say, well, wait a minute, what was my purpose? When I was riding my bike when I was 12 years old, what was I really destined to do, and have I been able to do that? So it's also taking an opportunity to re-examine your life purpose. And it's never too late. So my kids are all grown now and out of college, and I had an opportunity to go back to school. And so it turns out that the curriculum is really about just what we're talking about. It's about looking at how we can integrate and make a bridge between some of those traditional healing awarenesses, consciousness, and allopathic or evidence-based science, of which, that's what people want to know. What's the evidence? Well, there's a tremendous amount of evidence out there. There's a tremendous amount of papers that are being written every day. I don't know if I believe this or not, but it seems like I'm standing in front of a fire hose. Somebody said the other day that, medical knowledge doubles every 73 days. That's incredible. But the other day I did a hit, because I'm now doing a dissertation on how stress affects the course of disease.
That's what your dissertation's about.
Yeah. It's because, we all have the ability to manage stress. We just don't necessarily know how to do that. But there's a direct correlation between that and what our body does as a result, and how disease progresses. We can't say necessarily that stress creates chronic disease like cancer or diabetes, but we can say that it absolutely affects the progression of disease. So I'm looking at what types of intervention, mindfulness, shamanic journeying, would actually give people access to reducing their own stress, and then does that affect their well-being? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of exciting. But the point was, there's a lot of evidence out there. The other day I was doing a literature search. There are 57,000 papers on stress and mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to see movement. Actually, some would say backwards, but some would say back to our inherent wisdom, the body's inherent ability to heal itself and to live fully. So I think the other thing that's really important now to remember, Andrea, is that we live now approximately 34 years longer, our lifespan, than 3 generations ago. So
it's incredible.
We have this incredible gift, which is we get the third act of our life. And unfortunately, what seems to happen is our health span doesn't match our lifespan. So people get sick early, they get into that chronic disease. So where can we make a big difference? Well, it starts with our own bodies, our own mindfulness. It starts with the exercise, the movement, the nutrition. Hippocrates said, thousands of years ago, let food be thy medicine. And it's been known. But we live in a world of processed foods and unhealthy foods and toxic foods. So getting back to really simple things is not a bad prescription for well-being and helping our health span match our lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I've mostly become a vegan.
Mm-hmm.
I would consider myself vegan/vegetarian. It just depends on, when or who, or, if someone's cooked something, I always
Mm-hmm.
figure out what I'm going to eat,
Mm-hmm.
right? But ultimately, I'm not against meat, but when I first got diagnosed with Graves' disease, I mean, I reinvented everything about my life. But one of the core things that I really went back to the basics is what am I ingesting? Like, not just food wise, like what am I ingesting with my mind? That's where that mindfulness comes into play, right? And what am I surrounding myself with, and what am I consuming on a daily basis, not just food? And really getting back to the basics and eating really super clean, or as clean as I can. Doesn't mean I don't go on vacation for 6 days and indulge in a bunch of stuff and drink stuff that I never drink and eat things that I never eat. But living in balance consistently, I think that's what I learned more than anything is bringing things into balance. So always counterbalancing so that my body doesn't have to. I mean, if I am getting a headache, I am going to take CBD before I'm going to reach for a Motrin once it gets really bad, right? I'm just always constantly trying to work with my body as opposed to against it. And that's what I really learned. More than anything, and that's what I try to teach other people to do too, whether that is, taking a 5-minute conversation with your inner child, or whether that is sitting underneath a tree and getting a meditation in, or whether that is, choosing a salad and then later on having the brownie, right? But, trying to always consistently bring your body back into balance.
Well, that is very, very true. And, our bodies are the world's biggest and most productive pharmacy. And at any moment, your body is doing thousands and thousands of biochemical reactions and keeping an amazing feedback mechanism of keeping us in balance. And it wants to heal. It wants to be in balance. So when we find that we can do some pretty simple things ourselves, we actually regain our power. Because a lot of, when I was in an emergency room sitting on my back, I wasn't very empowered. I was disempowered, and rightfully so. But long term, to avoid being in that situation,
Right.
I need to regain as a patient my power. And that power comes from, really what I look at as our energy fields. And over the course of the last 10 years or so, I created a series of personal energy classes that deal with our energy field. We're in the presence of each other here. Every cell in our body is generating energy. It's generating heat. It's generating light and electromagnetic energy. And we have an electromagnetic field that's around us. Well, guess what? Not all of our sensitivities are up here. It's not all what we think, what we say, what we do. It's what are we feeling? What are we sensing? What are we sensing with our heart space, with other ways that we communicate? So that idea of really managing your personal energy, leads to a much happier life. It leads to knowing what boundaries are, knowing when you can feel safe. When you're in a room and you have a feeling, something isn't quite right, you need to trust that. It's not just your intuition. Intuition is a little limiting. It's understanding all of your energetic receptors that we have and how to be with other people, how to be with the world so that it regenerates us, not depletes us. So I found most people will say, well, how do you do that, right? Like, how do you create that awareness, right? And I think there's probably 2 steps that are really important that I've learned that everybody can learn. The first is grounding. What's grounding? Well, it turns out if we're living in electromagnetic, energetic world, there's a lot of
interference.
There's a lot of energy moving through.
Socks are even an interference.
Exactly. Oh, guess what? What's the biggest holder of energy, I guess, and the source of nourishing energy? It's the earth, right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about grounding, our bodies are sort of like batteries. We can hold a certain charge, and we get overcharged, or too much energy comes at us and we hold it, and we start to have physical problems, emotional problems, stress, trauma, things like that. We can't do anything about. Why? Because we may not be grounded. And so, like you said, wearing socks. Well, guess what? Most of us walk around with rubber-soled shoes.
Yep.
Those are great insulators.
Yep.
Those separate us from the earth.
Yeah.
So grounding is a really easy meditation, and it's something that I love to do and I love to teach. And it makes a difference because it puts people back in touch with their body, a place that they don't always go to.
It's definitely somatic. Which is essentially the basis of somatic therapy, right? It's getting you back here, because especially when we're living in such a triggered environment, especially since COVID, that people are essentially, not living in their bodies. They are trying to escape as much as possible and leaving, for lack of a better analogy, leaving no one at the wheel to drive the car. So getting people back into their bodies is really important, right? So we can be more conscious about how we're impacting each other, how we're taking care of ourselves, and how we're taking care of the people that we love and cherish, and the people, the world in general, and all of the animals and the plants and everything that is essentially we're responsible for, we're the gatekeepers of. So getting people back in their body, thank you for that.
Well,
thank you for that. I love grounding people too and teaching them a grounding meditation. I do it with everyone.
Well, maybe we should do that. Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Let's just do a quick grounding meditation.
Sure.
Because you're so right. It's like when we're up against the pressure and everything, we tend to leave. We tend to leave our body. It's not a comfortable place to be. But also when we operate from us being separate from the world, we're usually operating from the neck up. And that's not doing us a favor, because our bodies are such sensitive receptors. So let's just try a little grounding right now. Are you up for that?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to lead it, or would you like me to lead that?
Well, that's a really good question.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I guess is my point.
Oh, I'm happy to lead it.
Okay.
But I'm always interested in learning others. So.
It's totally up to you. I just didn't want to put you on the spot, make you do something you weren't prepared to do. No.
Okay. So let's tell you what. Usually what is good is to be sitting. You can sit or lie down. I'd like you to uncross your legs and put both feet on the ground.
Yeah, I will.
You will?
Yeah. I absolutely will. If we're starting now, then...
We are starting now.
Okay, go.
It's a do it as we go here. Okay. So I want you to just put yourself at ease in your chair, feet on the ground, shoes off. And put your attention on your breath. And you can close your eyes if you wish or not. But just find your breath. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. A little more slowly and deeply than normal. Sometimes we count to 5 on the inhale, and 5 on the exhale. And allow your body to relax, allow your shoulders to relax, your arms. Feel your chest rise with the breath in, and allow it to go out easily. Allow your tummy to relax, your pelvis, your thighs, if your attention wanders, just allow it to come back. And now I'd like you to imagine, as you put your attention on your spine is a very strong, stable structure that holds us up. As you put your attention on your spine, go down to the base of your spine and imagine that there's a root growing out of it, growing down through the chair, through the floor. It's a very special root. It grows very quickly as you see it going down into the earth. Notice any sensations. What does it feel like as it goes quickly and rapidly towards the center of the earth? With every breath, allowing it to grow down more, quickly coming to the end, to the center of the earth. At the center of the earth, there's a large object. Usually a boulder works well, but this root growing down from your spine wraps itself around the boulder securely. Grounding you to the center of the earth. Now bring your attention back up to your feet, to the soles of your feet. Feel them on the floor. From the soles of your feet, there are two roots. They're growing down as you breathe through the floor, through the earth, very quickly down to the center of the earth. Again, with each breath, growing deeper and more deeply rooted in the earth. And these roots also wrap themselves around the same boulder, securing you and grounding you to the earth. And as you're grounded to the earth, you notice warm, loving Earth's energy. It might be a light, it might be a warmth, it might be a feeling, but that Earth's energy comes up through the roots, up into your legs, into your spine, and back down, just like a wave. With each breath coming up, the Earth's energy is starting to fill you and going back down. And the Earth loves to take any energy that's dense or isn't yours back into the earth, transforming it into beautiful golden light. So as you breathe out, you can send down any energy, any feelings that don't serve you through those roots down to the earth. The earth returns its warm, loving, healing energy up through your legs, through your thighs, and back down like a wave. And as you bring the earth's energy up through your body, it easily passes up. Put your attention on your heart space. Breathing in and out through your heart space. You notice in your heart space that there's a chalice, a goblet, beautiful golden goblet. See what that might look like. And notice that as the earth's energy comes up through the roots into your body, it flows into the goblet, overflowing, filling it. That beautiful light spills over the edge of the goblet and out into every cell of your body. The earth's energy, that golden light, nourishes every cell of your body. And there's more than enough. As it fills your entire body, you notice that you can radiate it out, the earth's energy, out into the world, affecting those around you. Now that you're grounded, filling yourself up, allowing the earth to provide its healing powers, know that you can come back to this place at any time. And every time that you are able to come back, you feel that energy more deeply, more fully, cleansing and cleaning every cell of your body. So when it feels right, bring yourself back into the room, back into this place where you live. Say your name, touch yourself. I live here.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Good. Well, it's one of those things that all of us can do. Not everybody sees those things. Everybody has different visuals, different understandings. But whatever comes up, whatever images come up, are there for you. And they're there for you for that purpose of grounding and being in your body and feeling comfortable and feeling safe. Mm-hmm. I like to do it after you do that a few times. It's a pretty standard script. when you get it in your mind a few times, you can do it in just a minute or two. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, it takes me probably maybe 30 seconds to a minute now. Yeah. And it's very, very similar to what I learned in clairvoyant program as well. So, that I give away as a meditation too on psychiccheerleader.com. But we have a boundary. We also put in a boundary, an energetic boundary for people. But it's very beautiful. I love the imagery and the way that you shared it. And I really appreciate that you shared it with everybody who's listening too, because everyone is more deserving of being more present to their environment and to this podcast even right now. Yeah.
Well, we call it one of the basics, and the reason is that in order to really be present, you have to be in your body, and being in your body is a healing process. It's not just one thing to say that, it's one thing to actually reimagine yourself, reacquaint yourself with it. You mentioned boundary, and another thing that's really important in my experience, besides grounding, which you can do anywhere, anytime, before going into a meeting, before having a conversation, is just to have an awareness of your felt sense. What is your energetic boundary? You want to try something with that?
Well, I don't want this entire podcast to be a class.
Okay.
That isn't really the intention of it. I really do appreciate that you want to share all of the things that you do. And I think it's very beneficial. And maybe we talk about different times that maybe you can come on and share different things.
Sure.
I absolutely do have some questions for you today that I would love to share some of the wisdom around that, because we really haven't talked about love. We have talked about some really powerful, wonderful things that I think have to do more with loving yourself or bringing balance to yourself, right? And I really want you to share with us, if you're willing, how you came to be more in love with yourself.
Okay.
Is it through these practices? Was it through a particular time in your life that really shifted things for you? I mean, I feel like you probably had multiple awakenings. You seem like you've had multiple awakenings in your life, even potentially going through one right now in your transformational process of your education, right? It's just awakening more to your history and your gifts, it sounds like.
Well, it's like peeling an onion back, right? So
is that what you've realized more than anything over time, is that it's like unwinding the certain aspects of you that came from this lifetime or what you were born into?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Because I had to sort of put together, well, why did I end up doing this job and this job and this job? And there were gifts in all of those, but they didn't really present a holistic picture. So all of the shifts and all of the changes, the reinventions, really, I think, were underneath it was, the big questions that we all ask ourselves. Who am I? Why am I here? What comes next? All of those things are part of self-discovery. And self-discovery requires that to love someone else, you first have to love yourself. You first have to find what it is that's lovable about you. Everybody came into this world not too fat, not too bald, not too bold, whatever. And those are pretensions, and they're coats that we have to put on in our life, which help us get through life, but they also insulate us perhaps from who we really are and what there is to really love about ourselves. How do we get in touch with the beloved, which is ourselves, So it's just a process of peeling the onion back and dropping some of the pretensions that we develop in order to be more vulnerable, to be more present. And the reason I spent so much time on grounding to me, it was one of the pivotal skills to being present and remaining present for people, for experiences, for jumping on an airplane and going 8,000 miles away into a different country with a different religion and a different language that I didn't understand, and try to be present to understand what their gifts were for me and that I could be seen. So allowing yourself to be seen, not just by others, but by yourself, I think is kind of the first step in falling in love with yourself, but also being available to love others.
Yeah. I feel like the spiritual component was what was missing from the first half of my life, only because, not to say that it wasn't spiritual, I absolutely was religious for all of my upbringing, and I always have had spirituality, but as far as like the core basic tenets of learning about energy systems and learning that I have an energy field and learning that I can manage my energy and learning that I can ask for more energy and learning that I can reground myself and doing the energetic components. Not everyone has to become a Reiki master teacher, but doing the energetic components is really kind of like the missing click for my healing, because I understood things logically. I went to a ton of therapy and, I cried my eyes out and purged my energetic field about a certain thing. But doing clearing the energy around that, because that's really truly also what grounding is helping with. It's helping you get reconnected, recognizing that you're constantly in support, you always were, and helping you reconnect to the earth in a much larger way so that you can feel like you belong here. And then also it's moving your energy when you call that energy up, right? And like a wave. You're shifting your energetic body, and by doing that, you're letting go of some blocks, energetic triggers, energy in your field, right? And that's also shifting you. So you're managing your energy, and in managing your energy, you're responding to the world differently. I'm responding to you differently. And yes, that has a lot to do with presence, but it also is just, I love that you said that. Thank you. In loving myself more and taking more responsibility for who I am in all of the ways, in the energetic ways, that's where real healing, transformative healing, lasting healing happens. And for me, that was the biggest, biggest missing component, because I had tried it every other way and spent plenty of money trying to do it, right? But the missing component for me, and I really want to stress that for anyone who's listening, and I think you and I both have this in common, right? Is the energy component of you don't have to do much, but even if everyone in this world did a little bit more of grounding or meditation or mindfulness technique or something that made them more, EFT, anything that brings you back into your body. If everyone was doing that, we would all just, our energetic systems, our vagus nerve, whatever you want to point at, would all be so much more present and calm and in our bodies or in our adult selves, right? As much as possible, and be more conscious and loving towards our environment. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that you grounded. I just want to make sure that we have some conversation for anybody that was expecting a interview today.
Okay.
So what do you love doing more than anything else?
Well, I guess I would say that what I love more than anything else is being responsive to what I have found to be my calling, which is working one-on-one with other people, or one to a few, or one even to a many, but teaching these kinds of skills and sharing those types of awarenesses, and then just watching how amazing people are themselves that they don't even know. One of my teachers said when I was training in this shamanic training pathway, he said, okay, now you're going to deal with the secret you keep from yourself. I went, secret that I keep for myself. How could I keep a secret from myself? What do you mean keeping a secret from myself? And it turns out,
you keep a lot of secrets from yourself.
We do. We're not even aware of them. Yeah. We're not aware of them. So, uncovering those in a safe way and allowing people to really get a taste of their own magnificence. There's nothing better than that.
Is that what really, really feeds you?
Yeah, it does. It does. And like I said, I come from this background of having my own journey with health and seeing it in others and knowing that our life journey has lots of gifts and we don't always have good health, but the ability to regain it through some of these tools is so important. Before I came over this morning, I thought, well, let me just put in a word for the day. And I put in this word, hugs. And because I thought, it seems like that ability to be in connection with other people is so important to us and something that we all suffered with over COVID of disconnection. And now that it's with us and we're back out in the world, we're having to reconnect. And I thought it was really amazing that the importance of being held is so basic to us. And it turns out that the average hug, do you know how long the average hug is?
I don't, but I bet you do.
Well,
it's probably like less than 10 seconds. Like it's usually pretty quick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 3 seconds. It's
okay,
like 3. Usually it's a quick hug.
I was being generous.
Yeah. But it turns out that if you can hold that hug in a loving way for 20 seconds or more, your body has a tremendous physiological changes. It generates oxytocin. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the loving hormone.
Yes.
It reduces your stress. It puts you back into an immunologically enhanced state, which helps prevent disease. It provides nonverbal communication. It even just the contact
you
of heart to heart. Yeah, you get into self-regulation. Your thymus gland, which is behind your breastbone here, gets activated and starts to generate more immunological cells. So there's this incredible physical reaction to just being hugged. So what's bad about being hugged, right? And what's bad about being with other people in that type of relationship when there are good boundaries, when we feel safe with each other. And those are important things you touched on, but those are also very important things. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to try to do every day.
I agree. Or on the energetic perspective, right? Opening or running the energy through your heart chakra or doing a heart chakra meditation, right? Is essentially the energetic component of that. And that you're not having to do all of these things all the time, all at once. Like it's not about being perfect, but that you're just placing more emphasis on taking good care of yourself.
Right. It's sort of like, in the airplane announcement,
put
on the mask first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that we get conditioned, tell me if I'm wrong, we get conditioned to believe that we're supposed to have, well, at least I'll talk about myself as a female, that we take care of everybody else, right? In order to be good little girls. And so, unlearning that behavior. It's not selfish to take care of yourself like a lot of us were taught. I can't say across the board. It's actually the most loving thing that you can do to take care of yourself. Because if I take care of myself, then Greg doesn't have to take care of me for me.
That's very, very true. And I'll go another place with this as well. I'm glad you brought it up. A few years ago, I was meeting with a group of massage therapists and clinicians, and we were talking about this. We were talking about grounding and things like that. And they said, when I'm with a client, at the end of the day, I just feel depleted, And that's a universal thing. Is like you have to realize that when we're in contact with other folks, we're donating our life force.
Yep.
And we need to be able to shift back into the rest and regenerate. We need to be able to be careful with that, because otherwise we can't possibly take care of everybody. But it is true that people in the helping profession generally are going to put their attention on other people. And unless they measure their energy, again, a reason to ground, a reason to do some of those self-regulating things, being kind to yourself.
Or even just getting a good night's rest.
Just getting a good night's rest. I'm familiar with that, I think. So, yeah, I remember that vaguely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's nothing. It's not rocket science.
Yes.
And it's just returning to wellness in a way that nourishes you so you can nourish other people, if that's what you want to do.
And become more holistic, right? And I think that that's your specialty. Remind me again, you're getting a PhD in?
I'm getting a PhD in natural medicine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting.
Yes.
It's still a ways away.
It's a PhD.
Yeah,
I mean, my hat's off to you for spending the time, the dedication, the courageousness. It's a lot. It's a huge undertaking. So, and I'm not at a place in my life where I'm brave enough to dedicate that much time to studying. So, yeah,
it's a real gift, and I celebrate that every day. I had to make those bicycle trips worth something when I was 12 years old. Right?
Well, it sounds like you've accumulated a wealth of knowledge over your experience here. And what would you say are some of your you were talking about gifts from previous lifetimes. What would you say are some of the intuitive gifts that are your strengths, or that have been coming on more online, let's say, since you studied shamanism, since you really started using your intuition in the ways that you're encouraging everyone who's listening to do? How have you become more sensitive? How about that?
So it's a great question, and I'm kind of conflicted because part of it is you have to own who you are, and part of owning who you are is awakening to whatever sensitivities we may have and tuning into those. And I like that. But I keep in mind that I'm also helping another person awaken to their own gifts and stuff. So it's not that I'm doing something to them. I'm being present for them. I'm accompanying them on the journey. But it's the gifts of sort of the shamanic arts are that is a direct experience that the other person is having, and you're facilitating that. So it's a direct revelation. Sometimes we act as intermediaries, but mostly we're not. Mostly we are witness to help people and allow them to have a direct experience to their own greatness. And that's kind of a different way of shifting it than I would have done it before.
Yes, I would agree. Yes. And you hold space for people to heal, essentially. You're a more neutralized vessel than, let's say, the rest of the world out there.
Try to be, yes.
Yes. Okay. So when I'm talking about intuitive gifts, I assume that you use your clairaudience for your meditations, for instance. So has all of the practices that you've accumulated through shamanism really enhanced your intuition and that knowing, that deep sense of knowing, or, your different clairs, or have you noticed that has really been integral to your loving yourself and being more holistic and being more kind and teaching others how to be present in this world? Have you noticed that that's really enhanced your gifts? Because I guess I was just referring back to earlier when you were talking about what are your gifts while you're here that you'd like to help people with them?
So Well, first, you mentioned clairaudience. So
Yeah.
let's keep in mind that we have different channels. So
Yes.
clairaudience refers to getting those senses or awarenesses through hearing. Some people hear things. Some people see things. Clairvoyance, clairsentience. They feel things. Those are all channels that are awarenesses that people can tap into, and some have more sensitivity in one area than another. So, having said that, in the again, I'm using the word shaman, but in that type of training, and it can be Reiki, it can be any of a number of modalities, you're sort of tuning in to follow energy. And that may come in the form of sounds. It may come in the form of a feeling. It may come in the form of images. So in my case, I think what was happening to me is we would learn to do meditations we call journeying to an upper world, a middle world, a lower world. Yes. And those are just, in the Carroll lineage, the way that they evaluate energy is it's not good or bad. It's simply lighter or it's heavier.
Yes.
There are different frequencies, as it were. So when we say the upper world, it's really the undifferentiated, pure tones or frequencies of energy, lightness. So when you put yourself into that sort of state where you tune into those things, what I've learned is I have to get my ego out of the way. It's like the information that's available to you through any of those channels is so diverse, and it's right on. And it's like, I'm not that clever to invent it myself, right? I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I think
I'm getting some help here.
I'm getting some help. There are helpers available here. Yeah. And, without going into what that shamanic journey is, it's a common way of accessing what we call the non-ordinary reality. And basically what we use is sonic drumming or rattling. Why do we do that? We do it because at certain frequencies, our brains attune to the drum or the rattle, and that shifts our awarenesses and realities and kind of opens those things up so that information becomes available to you. So the beauty is, if you are doing a journey, quote unquote, generally there's a question. It's not like a Ouija board. It's not like, well, should I go date Jill or Jane or something? No, it's more like, what is it that I need to know or to learn that will shift this or will affect it? So there's a question, there's a quest that you're on, sort of a hero's journey in a way. And so that sends you on it, and there's information all around us that's available. And that's really what happens. And so you asked me, what are the gifts that in effect give me the most pleasure, and it's watching people awaken to that. Because again, that's a very simple technique. There's a lot of evidence behind it. And that's why I'm interested in saying, well, how would teaching people to do this journey, to open themselves up to these other realms, affect something as tangible as, a disease process or an illness? Can we affect that? Is that one of the things? Because if we really have that inner knowledge of what our bodies need to be well, we should be able to tap into it. And I have a feeling this is one of those routes we need to go down.
Yeah, I would be in 100% agreement with you, and I can't wait for you to get it out there. And I think this is the direction that we all are headed, right? Is really learning how to compassionately heal ourselves, and more people that can describe that process or share that process or what that looks like, the more we can educate people on it, the more that we can teach them how to do it for themselves, we will all be in a much, much better place. and I think that's the most loving thing that we can do for humanity, is to continue to evolve and more compassionately evolve for ourselves and each other. So I really congratulate you on your efforts, because, it's like trying to get two sides of the fence to talk to each other, and there is a lot of division out there in the world right now. And I see you as someone who's trying to bridge the gap. So I am very appreciative for your efforts in that, and I'm excited to see, what your thesis turns out. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Well, let's hope so. It's an adventure. It's an adventure,
and
it's
just
the
like
beauty.
Writing a book. I mean, I can't even imagine.
It is.
And how you started the process, as opposed to even halfway through, you're like, oh, well, this is really now where I'm headed with this. And I'm sure that you have more work to do. No pressure, but I'm really excited for you and other people like you and like me to be continually bridging the gap between both worlds of Eastern and Western medicine. And I applaud you for the work that you've done and that you continue to do.
Well, thanks, Andrea. It's great to be with you. I just, you mentioned the changes and everything, and one of them that really is challenging is, how do we do this work now in our connected world? We're doing a podcast here now. There is a whole different way of doing online classes and hybrid classes. And how do you bring that out and still keep that kind of energetic awareness to it? I used to teach, and I will continue to teach, a series of classes on personal energy, where we would get together for a full day, once a month over the course of a year. And that was a vehicle that allowed us really to download, to integrate, to really get a sense of all of this energetic stuff that we're talking about. Now the format is now moving towards, well, can I sign up for this online course, and could I get it through my iWatch here?
Yeah.
So, it's a real interesting thing in that not only the bridging the paradigm of conventional medicine or allopathic medicine and traditional healing arts requires a new paradigm, but we also have to have a new way
of sharing
that.
The
Absolutely.
Yeah, and bridging all of the different generations, right? Online. Because even, generations below me have all of this podcast stuff figured out.
Absolutely.
And I will be honest, I'm relying on someone's knowledge on that, because that just wasn't something that I went to school or learned. It's something that I've learned later in life. So I'm very grateful for that experience. But trying to get that information across and sharing that in ways that is digestible for people of different generations too is really, really, truly important to spread the word, for sure. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I'm checking on time because you've been talking for a bit. Okay, so what did you love doing as a child, Greg?
What did I love doing as a child? I guess I saw myself as a builder, and that was another thread. So, I was really lucky. My dad was a very patient man early in my life, and gave me a sense that I could create things and build things. And my mother was also very creative, and she was artistic. And so both of those things came together. And so I loved that. And for part of my journey, like I said at the very beginning, after thinking I was going to medical school, then I ended up being an engineer. Well, how'd that happen? Well, engineering is a really interesting thing because it has to do with what?
It's very creative.
It's creative. It's very process-oriented. And it's about building. It's about building something tangible.
And it's problem solving.
So those, and being curious.
Yes.
Was what really gave me a lot of
I would say that's
happiness.
A gift of yours.
Well, the other thing I will say, this is a little diversion, but I grew up in a time in the Bay Area of California, where it was during the space age. And so all of our fathers worked in the space industry, at least the kids that I was in school with. And so there were a lot of experimental programs in schools and curriculums. And so it gave us freedom. And I didn't realize it at the time, but one thing that stuck with me is I grew up with people like Steve Wozniak, who was in my class, and Steve Jobs, who was a few years behind me. And I remember, for instance, in 7th grade that
I forgot you were in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I
grew
was
up there.
too. Yeah.
I remember we talked about that. And, schools at that time, public schools were really kind of avant-garde. That's what I meant, or not avant-garde. They were tied in with a shifting curriculum, and we really were at the head of a lot of things. And there was the idea that everything was possible.
Yep.
And so
we had hope.
Yeah, we did. And
we had opportunities. We were very excited in school.
Our things seemed to be
very,
limited.
very different. Yeah,
without limits.
Yeah.
And so as I was saying, by the time I got in 7th grade, I remember Steve Wozniak came to class one day in science class and had this aluminum box, and it had a bunch of switches on it. And it was his first computer before there was Apple. Had no idea about that. But his father taught me Ohm's law and other things. So there was this environment that you could do most anything. And when Steve Jobs came along, the one thing that just sticks with me, he did a great commencement speech at Stanford shortly before he died.
I have it printed.
Yeah, I do too. And he was an extraordinary person, but it was the stay curious, stay hungry.
Yeah.
Stay curious, stay hungry. And that's what's guided me in my life.
And question everything.
Question everything,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So between the two of them, they were two very different people.
They were very different people.
And I really acknowledge who they were, and that we didn't maybe have at the time the ability to truly appreciate the genius that was being nurtured. But we all got a piece of it. There's a piece of genius in all of us.
Yeah, it's sitting here on my table right now, and in my bag is my laptop. We absolutely benefit from it. We're still benefiting from it greatly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It kind of has taken over the world a little bit, Apple. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and has kind of built, at least in my opinion, kind of was what built a lot of Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
we have a lot to thank for your class and the classes behind you.
Yeah, it was an interesting time.
It was a very interesting time. My ex-husband grew up there as well. So I'm very, very steeped in good old Monte Vista High School. I actually worked at Monte Vista for a bit in there.
It's closer than I thought. I was at Homestead. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know Homestead. I actually went to college with somebody who graduated from Homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very familiar with that area. And
well, you asked about
there.
Building. I guess the other piece of that, that's really what drove me during that time. And it was extraordinary times. But as I grew older, I ended up being at Stanford. I was the associate athletic director for facilities.
Oh, cool.
I ended up being the general manager of the Rose Bowl.
Wow.
And so at that point, it was all about building things. It was about new facilities. It was about that kind of engineering part of me. But along with it was like, well, wait a minute. There may be a plaque on the Rose Bowl press box that has my name on it. But is that really my legacy? Is that really what's going to endure and withstand and be the contribution? Because we get it to a point in our life where we really start to think about our life purpose. And so for me, for quite a number of years, it was about building tangible things and doing them in
really
new ways.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But then I realized, well, wait a minute. There's this whole other thing, which was that early calling. And maybe if I could make a difference with one person's life and how they deal with trauma or how they deal with their disease, that to me is more rewarding and more enduring than the plaque on the wall. And so that's what fundamentally shifted me, I think, into this pathway. So
It's beautiful. I'm really glad because we get to benefit from your entire journey. And it's been a great one.
well, let us hope it continues for a while.
Yes, of course. Well, that's what it's all about. Is
Yeah.
you've learned to love yourself and take better care of your needs, aspirations, wishes, goals, inspirations. And you seem to have progressively throughout your life made more conscious decisions on what contributes to that in all ways, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm just a really lucky guy. I think the other thing has to do with manifesting. We haven't really talked about that.
Yeah.
But, my life has had ups and downs, and there have been down times where there seemed to be no hope.
Uh-huh.
And yet maybe it goes back to those early days, but it was like when you can be open to allow something to manifest, it usually does. In fact, the universe always responds. So there's conditions for manifesting. And when you can look at those and kind of live in that way of sort of being able to step back into the not knowingness. Sometimes when we're going down a road and we're just trying to keep between the lines here, and we think there's a destination, and it turns out there's a roadblock in front of us that really stops us. But in order to find a new pathway to manifest something,
You got to be open to the possibilities.
we got to have a conversation for possibility.
Yeah.
We have to go into that knowingness. And it's the time that we're most resistant to it because we're usually in panic, we're under stress. I've got to make this happen. This can't possibly, bankruptcy, I can't possibly go through that. I'm going to lose my house. They took my car. All true. But there are gifts in that shift and open up other pathways to you. And so I think that's just another element of just reacquainting ourselves with the magic of life through manifesting and knowing that there are endless possibilities. And I have been a witness to that, and I've been a beneficiary of that. So,
yeah. And asking for more or asking for something
it's
different.
okay to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not worrying about how. That's essentially
Correct.
how a vision board works, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just you don't always know how it's going to happen, but if you keep stepping towards that, the universe will continue to provide or to mirror what it is that you continue to visualize or you continue to focus upon or you continue to step towards. It's just magnifying everything that you're creating and you awakening or waking up to the fact that you're creating things all day, every day through your words, through your expressions, through your movement throughout the world. Manifestation is huge. And to be able to get out of your own way.
So very
when you
true.
do come to that roadblock and not being so fixated on what has to happen, but really coming from a place of non-attachment. Not asking, but non-attachment. Once you have asked, is just stepping away from it and recognizing that the universe does provide, the universe always has provided, you've always figured it out, and more than anything, it wants to support you, whoever you believe in, wants to support you and wants you to succeed. And if you're able to, surrender to that and trust in the fact that, benevolence is coming your way and that the best thing for you is absolutely coming your direction, whether you're ready for it or not, but that you are receiving exactly what you need to receive in that very moment and in the very next one as well.
It's very true. It's very true.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Let's skip here a little bit to what would be the last words that you would like to hear before you die?
I am laughing not because it's a laughing matter. I am laughing because one of the classes that's near and dear to my heart that I teach is something called Life Wisdom. And it's helping people, we touched on, reconnect with or reimagine their purpose in life. And one of those questions that I ask is, what are the last words on the last day on this earth you would like to hear? So I guess it comes back to me.
Well, it's a great question, isn't it?
It's a fabulous question.
Yeah, so I figure you've thought about it. If you're having other people think about it.
Well, probably not enough, but it does come up. And it comes up, I think, at this phase in my life where I've got a lot of road miles and, there's more in the rearview mirror than in the forward view. So it does become very present for people. And given that, I think the last words would be, that I'd love to hear was that he led a full life, and it was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that he made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see that. I see that for you. I see it burning in your heart when you talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I feel like that's absolutely a very easy thing to say about you already.
Thank you. Well, please, let's hold that thought for the future.
Oh,
okay?
yeah. I mean, we could cancel it out right now.
No. It's a guiding light, but it's one of those that I'm really happy that every breath is a privilege.
It absolutely is. And I think isn't that the gift of getting older, as you've noticed, how appreciative you become of the things that you took for granted or the things that you thought you knew about yourself and the world, and how it's just continually opening up to the wisdom of the fact that you really didn't know what you, you knew. Isn't
that true? Yeah.
You know, and that you continue to get better at knowing yourself and trusting in the past and trusting in your experience and trusting in yourself to get through it, and getting better at being you. If you're doing it right, let's hope that you're getting better at being you while you're here. That is kind of the lesson of school while we're here, right? Is to get better at being here and us.
Yeah, I think that when you asked me at the beginning the journey, the first big hit was, as I mentioned, when my brother passed away at a very young age. He was 16. And at that moment, what happened was I really realized how short life is. I really realized that every day has to count. And, how finite it really was. And that's carried with me. And so I think, not that I would wish anybody to go through that, but we are confronted with our mortality.
Sure.
We're confronted with things that seem to want to annihilate us, and we come through it. And in coming through it, there are gifts that we can't see at the time. I could not possibly see that. I can see it now looking back. I can be very grateful for the things that have opened up to me. My wife often calls me Forrest Gump. She says, things happen to Greg. I don't know why, but it's like, they invited me to the White House again. And it happens. So, that's just more evidence that we gather along our journey of what we're meant to do and the shortness of our life, and so that we need to live it fully. So those little exercises that we did are all part of, just staying with it, just staying with the course and being open to it, opening to our clairvoyance, our clairaudience, our clairsentience, all of these senses that actually are here for us.
To guide us.
Yeah. Precisely. Yeah.
It's really lovely.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Andrea.
It's been a really big pleasure to talk to you about your awareness as well as your knowledge base. I really appreciate you sharing more about shamanism in general because you're so more knowledgeable about it than I have awareness around all of the different aspects of it and how it's so beneficial. All of the techniques that I ever did, the journeying, are really beautiful experiences. You don't have to be anyone special. It's not a special club. Anyone can do it. That we really try to encourage other people to really learn it. But I really appreciate you sharing those aspects of wisdom too with us. You've shared some really beautiful things about medicine too. So, and I of course appreciate your just the way that you express yourself and articulate and the things that you choose to share too. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Andrea. It's so wonderful to be with you and reconnect. We had an opportunity to get to know each other a few years ago, and so those are a few chapters down the line, and I think we just deepen that as we go along. So thank you.
You're welcome, and I look forward to other collaborations. However that continues to manifest. As we were talking about manifesting, you covered some really interesting topics and some very thought-provoking things. So I'm appreciative of what you've shared, and I hope that we can have you again.
Thank you. Hope we haven't bored the audience.
No, I think that this actually, that's the best part about this is I never really know the direction it's going to head. That's what's so exciting. I have certain things that I want to kind of cover or highlight you or highlight the things that I think are important to you, of course. But if the conversation takes a left turn, I'm always like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And now we're talking about this. So it's been really wonderful. And I appreciate the collaboration of energy. So
great. I appreciate that. I also appreciate you as the psychic coaching that you've been doing and everything. It was great to look at your website.
Oh, thank you.
And I appreciate that. I should probably mention my website.
Yes, please do.
Which is luminoushealth.net.
Yes.
Not real active, but I'm looking forward to putting some more things up.
Yeah.
Skills for people and some of the classes and things. So
I
think it's a good combination. I'm getting back to it.
Yeah.
I'm putting my nose up in the air once I get through with this study that we're doing now. So
good for you. I'm really excited about what you're going to start to teach and what you're going to start to share too. We've talked a little bit about that off air. So I will put your information below for anyone who's listening or anyone that's watching. And you can find out more about Greg through his site. And we look forward to having you on next time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All
okay.
right.
I'm going to end it there.